I think, yeah, we can start this off just by you giving us a little bit about what you do. You know, what do you talk about? What do you dive into in your videos and anything else pertaining to that?
Of course, man. Yeah. So what I do is the way I like to describe it is I like to help people outgrow pornography. I like to help people retain their sexual energy. And really, man, the reason we're doing that is not just to get out of our own way, but really, man, it's to ground ourselves in something even deeper. Because dude, when I moved out my way, when I stopped watching pornography and I stopped releasing a lot, I stopped, being addicted to casual sex and other things. And a very natural spirituality came to me, man. Um,
Yeah.
very, very natural. And it's interesting, man, because it can start, quite extreme. Like I was properly addicted, man. For a number of years, I'd used a bunch of drugs with pornography. I would be trying to get the maximum experience. And really, man, as I've done all this work on myself, there's just so much to it. And where it's led me is this really spiritual place. If I can kind of very, very quickly summarize the kind of a journey, it's been a little bit like outgrow and transcend pornography, retain sexual energy, and now I'm even practicing celibacy, which I just never thought I'd do, man, because it's just, to me, that seemed like a dry, boring thing. But really, man, it makes me feel the most spiritual and the most conscious and the most
Yeah.
loving.
It's so true.
Um,
Yeah. All the sages say that too. And I used to read that before. And I'm like, I'd scoff at it. No, sex, what are you talking about? Is this guy crazy? And then, I'm in the same train as you, in the same boat. Actually, went forth with the celibacy and no masturbation, no porn, cutting that all out. And it's real. Like you said, a natural spirituality comes about from it. And to anyone that has no idea, it may seem crazy. I understand. But when you actually get on that wavelength, it's like, it's such a powerful thing for a man, at least. I don't know how it is for women, to be honest with you. I imagine it's similar, but for a man, it's one of the most powerful things you can do for your being and for your, just your soul, man. Seriously.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
that's damn right, man.
I
That's damn
believe
right.
it. I believe
It's
it.
funny, man. I love. I don't know if you know anyone who actively practices this kind of thing. But anytime I speak to people who have, didn't do it and they're doing it, or they start to do it, and they kind of see the light and the magic behind it, they're like, "Dude,
Yeah.
it's a little bit like a spiritual awakening with it." To be honest, man, I call it like a retention awakening when you're like, "Whoa, wait! If I do this, I actually feel really different. I actually feel really good."
Yeah. It's wild.
It
Because we
is.
live in a world that is completely opposite to that. So it's like we're living in this where it's entirely against you. Our over sexualized world pretty much alludes to Satan being at every corner in that in that aspect, man. It's difficult to actually stay on that wavelength, especially as a young man. But I feel as though it's extremely fruitful if one does. For anybody listening, and I looked at my analytics, mostly it's young guys. For all you guys listening, just do it, man. Just actually don't succumb to the succubus, the succubus spirit of our culture, man, because it will just drain you. It will just suck the energy out of you, and just lead one down a path of just, I don't know, degeneracy. And it's so easy to get sucked into that because literally we do it to ourselves, masturbation, or also, sex as well. We we go out of, it's almost like we go out of our way to follow that path of sin that eventually degrades us. So what I'm trying to say is that be wary of the world that we live in.
Man,
And you have to
that
have due diligence in that. So go
that's
ahead.
really good advice, man. That's absolutely really good advice. Like,
Yeah.
now more than ever, it's just so tempting, so easy, so
Hmm.
easy. I often mention to people in my videos and everything that you could just really quickly just whip up some hardcore drugs on your phone. Like,
Yeah.
I saw recently someone calling it digital cocaine. I was like, damn, that's it.
Yeah.
That's what pornography is, man. That's how it makes you feel. Like, it's a crazy rush. It's awesome. It's amazing. It was my drug of choice for many years. I loved
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
It's like, wow, wow, wow. But it spiritually drains you. And then for me personally, man, it just wasn't sustainable. I just couldn't keep doing it. And
No.
like, I had this calling from the universe. And especially when you start mixing it with awakening and you start, maybe have a trip and you're like, wait, what? Whoa, whoa, whoa.
Hmm.
You start realizing you just can't keep that kind of thing in your life.
Yeah, man. I believe this may seem like a conspiracy, but I believe pornography and the accessibility of it, literally we can get it in 5 seconds and see some very grotesque stuff right now, is if not the downfall, one of the top three downfalls of our society. Just the just what we can see like this in our pockets at all times, pretty much anywhere now, is very strange. It's not natural at all. It's very strange, man. And if it's not, I don't know. If it's not, I would be surprised. I don't know. It just doesn't seem right. When you get on the train of celibacy and you actually do learn how to control and master your sexual energy, it almost seems obvious that this is degrading our world, you know? It
Yeah,
has to
man.
be. It has to
If I
be.
can speak to that, man, that's so real, man. Like, the more awake you become, the more sensitive you become. It becomes just so clear. Like, I was into the spiritual work and meditation and the enlightenment, before and in and around the no PMO, no fab retention, celibacy. But dude, as soon as I started to get, as soon as I started to really raise my state, really raise my consciousness, I could see it so clearly. Like, it would pain me, man. It would cause me so much suffering. I can't tell you how much suffering I've had because of PMO and it just being in my own way. And oh man,
Yeah.
like, but with awareness, do you see it so clearly, man? It's when we're asleep, does it stay there as an option?
Yeah. I feel like that's the, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, go for it. I was going to say, if you've had experience with that at all.
Oh yeah, for sure. I was going to say, I feel like that's the cherry on top of the whole path. You know, you could be a yogi and do all of the asanas and meditation practices, but if you're not in tune with your sexuality and actually controlling it, you're missing it, man. You're missing a huge aspect of what it means to be a yogi, a brahmacharya, as they say. And that doesn't go spoken about much in this realm. I feel as though we live in a world where people are very liberal about their sexuality, which we should be. We should have freedom around it. But freedom doesn't mean excessively like, just whenever you can, either having sex or masturbating, like, you know what I mean? You gotta have control. Like, just because we have freedom doesn't mean there's no control in that. So I feel once you do, that is the cherry on top of this whole path. Because think about what it is, man. It's the energy to create and continue God, continue consciousness, the creation that's in us. We just think it's some kind of feeling that we feel good for a few seconds with somebody. It's like, no, man, this is like the power. This is the energy to continue what you are. And we just take it so lightly. But when you take it seriously, it's like you become Superman. It's very powerful. It's very
That's
powerful.
right. Yeah. What sort of needs to happen is like this shift where you start thinking of, you go from sex and sort of sexual energy, whatever you think that is, to straight up ojas, where you convert it into this really powerful spiritual force. Yeah. And when you have this experience where you retain for a couple of days or a couple of weeks, and you start feeling it, you're like, whoa, dude, this is it's like spiritual electricity, man. It's like, you feel the kundalini, you feel the energy, you feel it at the base of your spine, you draw it up, it's very special, man. And where I'd love to go with this conversation, man, is in a very spiritual direction, which is God, because that's what I'll lead you to. Because I'll be honest, man, like, I've done, a lot of work with nofap and retention and so on, but it's taken me to God and awakening and enlightenment, which is what I'd love to speak to you about as well.
Yeah. Oh, how do we even get into that? I mean, how would you describe that to somebody, man? If we could even describe that, how, I mean, okay, let's start with this. How did you get on this wavelength? Like, what is this God awakening, enlightenment to you? I know that's a big one.
Dude. Okay. So first of all, it's always been there. It's just a matter of awakening. I think I've always been spiritually inclined. I've always been a bit more introverted and a bit more, I think I would describe my soul as kind of old. I've always felt a little bit more, kind of more mature than people, but I've never really, I've just kind of kept that to myself and had a good relationship with myself, a kind of my inner world, and very close to that. And I've always been very aware. And I started to kind of inquire kind of young about, just like, the universe, and started to ask myself quite deep questions, brother. And it was good. But then I remember like being, still young, and I remember just being a total fucking idiot.
Yeah.
And so I wasn't really channeling that maybe when I was like 13, 14. However, maybe with some cannabis or something like that, I started to see different possibilities. I started to see, wait,
Yeah.
actually, man, I can be more self-reflective. I can be more conscious of my experience. I can actually raise my awareness and see that I'm more than my ego.
Mm.
So I did that a bunch, man. It wasn't very, not like, to begin with, man, smoking weed was not like a conscious thing. It was it was an escapist thing, brother. It was an escapist thing.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then, that was, when you see that you can alter your state with cannabis, you can see you can do it with other things as well, which is very powerful tools. And then from there, I looked into meditation, Kriya yoga, Kundalini yoga. Honestly, man, I've tried, like, I've dipped my toes in like a bunch of different spiritual traditions and teachers and texts and scriptures, and I've just picked a few, having gone through loads of them, and then I've had awakenings, and I'm like, okay, I can understand and feel what is true and what is genuine, and this for me comes down to what is. Well, you ask yourself questions like, what is reality? What is God? What am I? Who am I? And it will just resonate. You'll find certain teachers and it will just resonate. And I found a good few teachers. And I'll be honest, man, I would not be here without them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Are there any teachers that have inspired you?
A lot. I can't even speak to how many. So many, man. I see the teacher in everybody, or I try to, at least. I think important part, what you said was, you just know it's true. Like, you have this intuitive sense. That intuitive sense in me allows me to see what is true in whatever medium it is. The teacher takes many forms. The guru, you could say, takes many different labels. It could be a book, could be actual speaker, it could be just a moment that happens in my life of synchronicity. But I try to see the Satguru in whatever it is, like wherever form it decides to meet me in, if that makes sense. But in terms of like people, Ram Dass is up there. Alan Watts got me on the wavelength. Tim Leary, just for his like radical revolutionary spirit. Some people think it's a little controversial, but I like him, and he got me into the idea of psychedelics. A lot of Swamis, Satchidananda. Dude, the list is too much. I don't even
all those Swami dudes.
Yeah, I don't want to bore anybody, but it's usually revolves around like yogic philosophy of the Vedas, also Buddhism as well. So yeah, Eastern philosophy. Something special about Eastern philosophy, and somebody that really knows how to put it with a certain flavor, because not all. Okay, just because somebody's speaking on Eastern philosophy and yogic traditions doesn't mean they're doing it in the right way. Some people, they just have the transmission, they just have the resonance in their words, and I just find the ones that do. Like I said before, that intuitive sense guides the way. It's just obvious, like it's just somewhat obvious. Like when I read something or hear somebody say something, it's like, yeah, they know. They know. They know what's up.
Isn't it funny?
Yeah.
You can tell, there's different, as you said, there's different flavors of spirituality and different teachers, and there's also different depths. One thing I learned, probably, if I could give one massive lesson to my younger self, I would say it goes so much deeper than you think.
Yeah.
And like for example, when I started out with like just Buddhism and mindfulness and things like that, and I didn't know that awakening was a thing. I knew Buddhism, I knew peace, I knew calm meditation, being mindful. But I didn't know God realization. I didn't know infinity. I didn't know self with a capital S. I didn't know what I'm on, all this stuff. So, you just have to keep your mind really open, really painfully open, man.
That's the thing. Always a student. That's a saying I like to keep in the back of my head. Always a student. Always be willing to be wrong. Always be willing to learn as well from being wrong. Yeah, mind open. That's the most important thing. Curiosity as well. I think that they kind of align. But stay curious on what the hell we are, because we have no idea what we are. We have no clue what the hell is going on right now in this moment. Realistically, like we can kind of put some labels on it and some stories and some narratives that people have guided us to from the past. But ultimately, we have no idea. And it's up to all of us to find that, or at least go on the path to that subjectively, you know?
Mm.
And then that truth that comes in, that may sound a little corny or cliche, but the truth that flows in is, it goes beyond words, but it's like, it's intuitive. Like I said before, it's just like something that is just, you know, you're resonating on the wavelength of what you're supposed to do here, like whatever part you play here, if that makes sense. The awakening to one's dharma, you could say. It just makes
Mm.
sense. It just becomes obvious. And I think this is a topic that we're kind of touching upon in the whole talk. It's just like this path, it just seems to become like effortless, you know? It's just like, oh, this is how we're supposed to live. This is how like I'm supposed to conduct myself here. It just seems yeah, effortless.
Mm. Oh
Mm.
man. Oh, like I tried so hard to get it to be effortless, man. I try so, isn't it funny how you try to get it effortless,
Yeah.
but it's like, and I still aren't there with it fully, and I know I'll be a very different human being, or I don't know if I'm a human being, but I don't know, I'll be whatever. I'll be a very different thing in like 10 years. But dude, I
Yeah.
used to try really hard to like force it, to like try and be aware and like be mindful ways and be like in state. Like, oh man, like you know, there's so many stories, like there's so many things that come up there with like trying to be in state, like even just in preparation for this, I was trying to be in state and everything. And like, whereas now, we did a really nice grounding meditation at the beginning. It's just like, yeah, you just, it's funny. The second you stop trying, it's just like, oh, there it is.
Yeah. Oh, there it is. That's funny. Yeah, it's so true. We try and try and try, only to realize the trying is futile. And really, all it takes is to just be here right now in this moment. And then being here in this moment, residing, I feel like if there is a goal to this thing, that is the goal. Like to just simply be in a resting state, be in an equanimous state to the moment, no matter what happens. Obviously, easier said than done. We have a lot of stuff that pops up in our life, but I feel as though if there is a goal, if somebody would ask me, like, hey man, what's this all about? Put it in a very simplified, general way. It's to be okay with the moment. Be okay with
Mm.
not being okay. It's just to be okay with whatever happens. And that's obviously an oversimplification, but I think if there is a goal, it seems to be that.
I really resonate with that, man. I really do. Like, if how it sort of speaks to me is, if there was a goal, as you said, it would be to awaken. It would be to, and then once you've awakened, once you've got this, once you've understood once you've got the message,
Yeah.
you're like, okay, no, let me live this. Let me embody it. Let me change my lifestyle and my way of being and my values so that
Yeah.
it fits with this truth and this God.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And sorry, not this God, but God as an absolute. God as reality.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, man. Once one does get on the wavelength of the here and now, I guess it's not really the end. If that is the goal, I guess then there's just another part to play from
Mm.
attaining said goal. One's dharma changes, you could say. I feel as though one's dharma changes to embody a different part in the play, you know.
Mm.
That's only the beginning. If there is, I mean, there's no beginning or end. Let me just say that in the absolute sense. But if you do get the message, it's like, all right, then what am I going to do with this transmission?
Mm.
And I feel like that's the next step, is how to actually integrate the sort of lessons from these teachers or guides that came before us, and then be the thread in that, you know, be the next chain link into that for hopefully other people in the future, the next generation. So this chain link, I like to think of it of dharma. It just keeps going and it evolves through the generations, through whatever tools and technology we have. I feel as though that is that's the path, and that's just me. Nobody has to believe me. I don't want anybody to force it and think like you have to become a teacher or anything, or you have to do anything. You don't have to do anything here. But I feel as though, personally speaking, how can I not talk about this stuff? How can I not embody just embody love, for my fellow brother and sister that I feel myself in. Like, how can I not do that, knowing that I'm part of it all? You know what I mean? It's like it's obligatory. I feel as though. Do you feel there's a different sense within you, like a different inclination within you now that you're on this wavelength, almost like different a different will comes about?
Wow. It's very similar to what you just said, Emma, with like once you have the transmission, once you receive whatever this is, like what came up for me was, oh, and awake, you've got this new awakened life. Like
Yeah.
you, of course, it's just the beginning because now you've got to live, or you can live an awakened life. Like everything is fresh and new, and
Mm.
you get to do everything from this new higher consciousness state and place and way of being. And so, first of all, man, you're just going to be nicer in general. You're just going to
Yeah.
be a kind of being. But dude, 100%. I can't actually remember the specifics of the specific wording of your question, man. Do you remember it?
Yeah, it's do you feel as though there's a different will that comes about once you get on this wavelength, like a different action in the play, you could say?
Yeah, man. Thanks for that. Um, yeah, man. It is. It's like it's weird. I would say it's the most organic will you could possibly imagine, and also almost your destiny will. I'm not really suggesting there is a destiny, but almost. If you want to imagine that, you can.
Yeah.
At least it feels that way sometimes. It's like, man, this is what I'm meant to be doing. Like maybe with your podcast, sometimes if you might have this experience sometimes where you're really present with a person, like maybe we are now. You're like, man, yeah, this is it, man. This is like what I'm meant to be doing, and so I would absolutely say that the will changes, and it's specific, and it's imbued with God.
Yeah.
That's been my experience, man.
Mm-hmm. Amen to that, man. I would also extend that outside of our creation that everyone sees right now in the future. It's that creation with God is also imbued in my personal life. We were speaking about our parents before, but I feel as though that wavelength and that will comes about just in all facets of my life. At least that's what I try to imbue in my life. It's that relationship with a greater whole, relationship with God, you could say, with everything, all parts of my life. This podcast is just a small fraction of what you people see of Gary Haskins. This is nothing. I try to imbue the spirit in everything that I do. And that's the most important part, because obviously not everybody's going to have YouTube channels like us. So I think the most important part for everybody listening is to realize that this wavelength, a different will comes about for sure, but it's not even about creating anything online per se. We just are the ones that do it, and this is what I genuinely like to do, but not everybody's going to be on that wavelength. But I think that's the beautiful part of it, is that we can all imbue this universal will, you could say, find our destiny or our purpose, you could say, and we all do it in our own way. We all do it in, I feel as though, the little things in life, holding the door for somebody, or maybe giving the barista a tip, or saying hi, or smiling, asking how somebody's doing in the elevator. Like, in those little things, that's really where God shines through. At least personally speaking, I feel as
Mm.
though God comes through in the little things in life where you don't expect God to come through. But then say you do strike a conversation with a stranger, and then they say something funny, and then you have a good convo, and then you end up getting their number or something, and you become friends, and blah blah blah. And that's how God works. And just like in mysterious ways, like love just intertwines in our life in very, very simple ways. But we have to be open to it in the smallest moments, on
That's
podcasts, but also in the smallest moments as well.
yeah. Well, yeah, man, so true. And of course, it happens when we don't expect it to, because when our ego isn't engaged in that sort of survival, in that want, need, chasing, whatever, of course, God slips itself in there, and it finds a way into our experience, and it makes us do something very conscious or loving. Like, yeah, of
Yeah,
course, like
yeah, man.
a couple of days ago, I was walking down the street, and I had just £1 in my wallet, and I was like, man, I just, it was weird. I was in a weird state, man. I just didn't really have anything on my mind. And I'm just like, man, I just need to give this away right now. And I
Yeah.
just gave it to the dude, who was sitting down, homeless dude. And I was like, yeah, man, that's what I need to do right then. And that happened because I didn't have any egoic agenda.
Hmm. I think that's part of the universal will, man. It's a sort of sense of unconditionality in one's action. And yeah, giving comes from that. Charity, donations definitely come from that. I realize that as well in my own life. It's a certain sense of just yeah, selflessness, unconditionality, but it's not like selflessness in order for one to um glorify that, you know. It's not like give money and then look what I did today, even though you did just say that, but that was just part of the
Oh,
story to prove a
oh
point.
no.
No, I think everybody understands what I'm saying. It's just a natural sense of selflessness that comes about that isn't tied to getting anything in return, you
Mm.
know. Just to maybe give somebody a compliment, walk away. I don't know, like just it's the simple things that come, but it's natural, it's not forced. It's just like, this is, you know why? Because it feels good to do that. It in that way it could be looked at as selfish, right? It could be looked at as selfish because it's like you're making yourself feel good by making the other person feel good. I could see
Mm.
that, I could see that argument, but I guess it's a selfish, it's a selfless, selfish act, if that makes sense. And
Mm.
it's a win-win for everybody to do the little things like that. But it's just natural. It's not like it's not forced in the moment. It's just natural. I would suggest anybody to try that. If you got $5, try and give it to the homeless guy. uh Try and tip somebody that maybe you don't think deserves it, right? They just made you some coffee, but give them a little extra, see how that feels. And I can guarantee you might start to realize that maybe this is what life's about.
Mm. Dude, yes, yes, yes. Like when you have those moments when you actually do the thing, as opposed to walking past that person or not tipping that person or
Hmm.
not helping that person. When you do that thing and you actually help them, you do. I'd love to hear if you have this too, but man, I have this feeling. Oh my god, yes, finally, you're not avoiding it. You're doing exactly it. It
Yeah,
is being selfless. It is loving.
yeah.
It's. Oh my god, it's so clear when you become more and more conscious as well. Because I may have done that. I may have done that a few times when I was younger, but nowadays, man, if I do that, I'm like, oh man, that's the only thing I should have been doing.
Exactly. And I think that's what this whole path is about, man, is slowly refining ourselves to become more of a selfless being, a selfless servant, one could say. Slowly and slowly. It doesn't happen overnight. But you will come to find in those little moments where you do selflessly serve others, it's like, oh, yeah, it just makes sense. It
Mm.
just makes sense. And I just go with that. I just go with that. I try to go with that at least. And I feel like that's the wavelength for all of us. Every human being, we're supposed to just selflessly serve each other. Um, yeah, I think that's what we're doing.
Yeah, man, exactly. Like it's counterintuitive, man, because it does take a long time for one to kind of be interested in that selflessness. I found myself needing to be selfish for quite a few years to kind of burn that. You know, I have an
Yeah.
older brother, he's always been so good to me because he's let me have that last chocolate or, you know, let me have that. And like, if we were with my granddad or something, he'd let me, you know, I don't know, if we're doing fishing, he'd like, you know, here's the rod, you can have that, you know, get that fish, you know, oh, thanks, man. You know, you could say I burned through my selfishness quite early. And we spoke about good karma earlier, but I think that's, you know, a bit of good karma to have sort of the drive to do that early and then to kind of exhaust it. And then now I try my best to be selfless.
Mm-hmm.
If you've had any experience with that, man.
Trying to be,
Sort of
oh, you're
being,
saying seeing selfish at first and then,
yeah,
oh,
moving
yeah,
into
yeah,
selflessness.
for sure. Because I think that's just how we're conditioned in the Western paradigm. We don't learn how to be selfless in school. I don't know how the English schools are, but in America, they don't have a class on charity and donation, you know, and the importance of that. So I think it's just a matter of deconditioning from the popular paradigm of more, 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 take, all mine, all me, and really getting on the wavelength of what's real here. Like getting on the wavelength of really how you can be happy, and how you can be happy is just it's really about giving, man. It's really about just
Mm.
giving what you can. Don't do it unscrupulously and get yourself into debt. Do give away what you don't need. And that's really, it's, I feel as though that's the wavelength to get on. And I'm not there, I'm not perfect yet, I'm not 100% a philanthropist, but I have been slowly examining that in my life, and it's just like, yeah, it just makes sense, man. It makes sense.
Mm.
So yeah, I think it's just a matter of just getting out of that satanic, like I said before, that satanic culture that we seem to live in, about of the ego, and reconditioning one to selfless service. That's what we're
Mm.
doing. I think that's what we're doing. The whole path is about that. You know, we could talk about enlightenment, awakening, and kundalini and blah blah blah. We get into all of these buzzwords, but really simplifying it, what it's really about is, yeah, we get a message, but it's like, what are you gonna do with the message? I'm gonna selflessly serve and give and donate to others. And it doesn't happen overnight. I think I already said that, but that's what the whole path, I feel as though, in my personal opinion, is about refining ourselves to become a loving being through all of the darkness, through all of our suffering, because we're all suffering, we're all going through it. So it's almost like, how can you not negate your suffering, just see past it to to see others suffering, to know that they're also in the shit with you, and maybe help them out a little bit. And imagine if all of us were on that wavelength, we all refined ourselves to the point of just helping each other out a little bit here and there, a little bit, letting somebody go in traffic when they need to go, just the little things. All billions of us. I imagine it would add up to a lot better world than we live in today.
Yeah, man, it's so true, man. And it has to start with you, doesn't it? It has to start with your own direct
That's the
experience.
only way.
Yeah, if you really, really look, like that's all there is. You've only got yourself, and you have to, that can be quite intense. Can be quite a big insight to have. Oh my God, like I'm all there is. That's a big insight. Quite scary at times if you're on the wrong side of it. But you're right, man. When you sort of have that, and you're like, man, how can I refine myself to be this loving person? That's the word, man. And like, it makes me think of, having certain trips and, experiences where you get these non-dual breakthroughs and these powerful, mind-blowing orgasmic experiences. But then you're like, can I bring this back into my relative existence? Can I bring this back into my normal life?
Yeah. I want to ask you that. And if you don't want to talk about psychedelics, let me know.
We can totally talk about them.
Okay. Would you be on this wavelength, you think, if it wasn't for psychedelic substances?
Oh, well, that's a really good question. Certainly not the depth that I'm at right now. Certainly not the level of understanding that I have been able to gain. It depends. Would we say cannabis is a psychedelic?
Oh yeah, 100%.
I was going to say, for me, it is. It's become one. It wasn't initially back when I was sort of like a teenager, but now it undoubtedly is. Like, it's very clear that it is. In fact, the more kind of like, if you do have experiences with other psychs and then you do cannabis, you're like, wow, it was a psych this whole time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, dude, 100%. Yeah, man, it's such a good question. So in a certain sense, I'd like to think so. I was into meditation, even like Buddhism back in the day, before I'd ever touched anything. And if I ever did or would, it would be very, very consciously. I have a rule. If you ever use substances, be very responsible, be very conscious, be very wise. You get punished otherwise by the universe.
Yeah.
And you just got to be really careful, really, really, really responsible. And that's the kind of way I would suggest. And also just being really careful of your own physical safety and mental health. You got to be really careful about this stuff. But if it helps you with awakening, then, do what you got to do. But man, in terms of, would I be on this wavelength? Again, not at the level, man. I just had no idea it goes as deep as it does. Can I ask you the same question, brother?
Yeah, I wouldn't be on this wavelength at all, for sure. I was always inclined to have a sense of self-inquiry. But I just didn't go about it in the right way. I don't know how to explain it. I was always curious on what the hell all of this is, but it was a little too rational, if that makes sense. I was a pragmatic atheist. Then got into cannabis and some high dose mushroom sessions, and I realized, like, wait a second, I'm doing this all wrong. And it just yeah, man, it just opened me up to a greater power, or powers that go beyond the five senses, if that makes sense. If that makes sense. So no, man, I wouldn't be on this wavelength. It opened me up to the grand mystery that we're in, for sure. So I completely revere the psychedelic experience for that. It got me on this wavelength of God, essentially, and that's never something I'll be able to look past. If I didn't have them, man, I don't know. I'd still probably be thinking science is the religion, I'd still, that's what I thought. I thought if it wasn't science, if it didn't have any kind of proof per se, then it wasn't real. And I didn't realize that I was the science, if that makes sense. Like my
Mhm.
subjective experience is the scientific experiment, if that makes sense. So it really got me on the wavelength of yoga.
Nice.
Yeah,
That's really
yeah,
hear
they're
you.
very powerful. That's for sure. I don't know. I have to think. This is just me thinking out loud here, but
Mm.
I like to think that we can't do it without psychedelics at this point. And I know that's some people would be like, "What are you talking about, Gary? That's crazy." But I don't know. I feel like we're so deep in it. Like we dug our hole so deep that there's
Mm.
got to
Mm.
be millions of others that were in my situation, that are in my situation, that aren't going to be able to dig themselves out without the big wake up call of a psychedelic experience, because we're just so conditioned in the psychedelic experience. I'm speaking about mushrooms here. They
Mm.
just allow you to just pierce the veil very quickly, very efficiently, if used in the right manner. And I don't see any other way of going about it in this lifetime, at least in Kali Yuga. Like we kind of need mushrooms and DMT and LSD and stuff as that, because I don't I don't foresee us getting the message per se without them.
Mm.
Agree? Disagree?
Oh man, oh man. Okay, a number of years ago, I would have, thought about it. I'm like, oh, but what about, really rigorous spiritual practice? What about 40 years of meditation? What about, 40 years of yoga? And then you trip.
Yeah.
And
It's like this is it. Oh, okay. This is what I was looking for the whole time. Yeah.
yeah, and you're right. I mean, I I could never see things like my perspective is permanently changed, permanently open, permanently blasted
Yeah.
open by these, by psilocybin experiences, for example, because what they show you is just radical states of consciousness, which you cannot even, I'd like to think I get somewhere with my meditation and yoga practice. I'm really happy that I've got to a place where I can, go inward after a good number of years of practice and get somewhere. Oh, I say get somewhere. There's nowhere to go, but you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
Feel God. We could say feel conscious is what it really is. But then, if you do have an experience and you're very responsible with that, it just blows everything out of the water, brother. And then like,
Yeah.
dude, what was I even doing?
Yeah. I think the most important part, excuse me, the most important part about them, in my opinion, is the message that it grants you. And it's what you do with that message. And Alan Watts
Mm.
says, if you get the message, hang up the phone. So I think that's kind of what I was alluding to. It's like, it's going to be hard for us to get the message without psychedelics. And you can meditate all you want. You can do the rituals and the modalities all you want, but until you're not necessarily going to get the message by doing that. Oh man, I read a good quote about that yesterday. I can't remember though. Damn.
Mm.
I wish I had it right now. Okay, sorry. But it was pretty much about, you know what? Can I take a few minutes and go find that? Because I'm pretty sure I
Dude,
was reading that yesterday. Let's take a quick break. I want to go
go
get
for it.
that. I want to go grab that book because it's a good quote. I'm pretty sure it pertains to what we're talking
Yeah,
about right now.
I'd love to
So
hear him.
we'll be back. Apologize about that, man. I had to figure out which book it was from. I'm reading like 3 or 4 different books right now, but this one's actually from, it sort of relates. I had to read it again. This is from The Island by Aldous Huxley, which is actually a novel. Like this is actually a story, it's actually a story with characters in it. But this part is about one of the characters reading a philosophy book. So it's a book within a book, which is really interesting. So I'll read a little bit of it. Knowing who in fact we are results in good being, with a capital G and a capital B. And good being results in the most appropriate kind of good doing. And this is the point I think I was kind of touching upon. But good doing does not of itself result in good being. We can be virtuous without knowing who in fact we are. The beings who are merely good are not good beings with a capital G and a capital B. They are just pillars of society. Most pillars are their own Samsons. They hold up, but sooner or later, they pull down. There has never been a society in which most good doing was the product of good being and therefore constantly appropriate. This does not mean that there will never be such a society, or that we in Pala, the place where they are fools for trying to call it into existence. Should I go on? Let me see. Yeah, I'll read a little bit. The yogi and the stoic, two righteous egos who achieve their very considerable results by pretending systematically to be somebody else. But it is not by pretending to be somebody else, even somebody supremely good and wise, that we can pass from the insulated manicheehood, which I think is like the layman, to good being. So I'll stop at that. This is good though. I kind of want to read more, but I'm not gonna bore anybody. So hopefully that made sense. It's like we can do the action, right? I think this is the topic we were on. We can do the actions and do the rituals and the meditation, and we can look like a yogi. We can look like a stoic. But it only means something when you resonate in good being, when you know who you are. And I don't know if I read that or not, but in the passage it says, when you know who you are, that results in just, I think we alluded to this, natural good being. So it's like, only until you get the message do the meditations, do the whole lifestyles approach to, this whole path make more sense. And it just, I don't know. How do I put this, man? I've met a lot of yogis in my lifetime. I've met a lot of people that they seem like they're on the path, but it's like you don't. And I'm not judging here, but it just seems like they're doing it in a manner that isn't quite real, if that makes sense. It's not quite aligned with the good being, to put it that way, in the book. So does that pertain to what we were talking about? Do you remember? Do you remember?
It does, it certainly does. Yeah.
Yeah, man. Yeah. It's like you kind of have to get the message first.
Yeah, you do. And like, so much of the work is just getting the message, man. It's just finding your way in. And, I'm so happy to be speaking today, man, with you. And as soon as you reached out, I was like, oh, hell yeah, man, let's do this. Yeah, without a doubt, without question, I could be in hospital with like 9 broken bones. I'd still whip up a camera, brother, and have this conversation.
Appreciate that.
100%, man. And I couldn't dream of a better name, by the way. The name Conscious Perspective is just the most beautiful thing I've ever heard. I swear to God, man. I swear to God. If I had a podcast, I'd call it that. So, beautiful. Yeah, man, it absolutely does. And you just need to find your way in, man. And it'll take a while. Like, I think there's a lot of suffering to be had, a lot of selfishness, karma to burn through, bullshit to deal with, ego to experience and just to have in the way. And then, when you do find your way in, which is where I seem to be taking this thread, you can be with a capital being. You can be your being with a capital B.
Yeah.
And then you can come from the right place.
Now, how would you say, if we could generalize it, people find their way in? Is this something that alludes to a like a cookie cutter framework, or is it different for everybody?
Really good question, man. I'll share one perspective, which is, kind of how I got into it myself. So interestingly, on the one hand, you can find your way in through things like mindfulness or things like basic spirituality. Interestingly, man, like one way I got in was actually through sort of self-development. So I do a lot of that kind of work as well. And I think at the higher levels, you start, asking yourself deeper questions. Like, for example, if you're really into, sleeping with people you want to be sleeping with, you do kind of ask yourself, well, actually, man, I've got to this level. I've got to this sort of, good level in this area. But then, you kind of ask yourself, like, well, what's really behind this? What's this really about? It's like the dream character within the dream. Be like, man, there's got to be more than this just dream activities, man. There's got to be something. What's the substance of this dream, dude? That's what I would be asking. And so, that was a weird way of saying you can start with personal development. You can start with being this, I would say I was more of like a dude who wanted to, be kind of ripped and what else, man? Like almost be a bit of a player and stuff like that. And that's kind of how I was a number of years ago. Not anymore though, man. And you might find yourself just being dissatisfied with that. So dissatisfaction as a way of coming into the path.
Yeah.
Suffering as a way onto the path.
Yeah.
As I said, mindfulness as a way onto the path. Psychedelics on the way to the path. Is there any others that come to you, brother?
No, I think you actually described it very well. And I think it all has to do with suffering, or maybe it's like reaching certain points in your self development and realizing, it's still like that pit. I'm still like yearning for something. I'm still trying to fill the void per se.
Mm,
Um, yeah, so it's like it comes from dissatisfaction ultimately, which one could say is suffering. But it's like the feeling of, oh, this ain't it. I got ripped.
mm,
I got the girl. I got the car. I got the house. This ain't it. What am I still searching for? So ultimately, I think it's, dissatisfaction that leads us down the path to find out what is it. We have to know what isn't it to know
mm.
what is it, I believe. And I'm still finding out what is it. I
Well,
don't think
dude,
it ever ends.
one thing that you mentioned actually that we can add to the list, which was earlier, curiosity.
Yeah, that's huge.
Curiosity and open-mindedness, brother. We forgot to mention that. I think you mentioned that really well earlier, man. Like that's totally a way in. I would say it's probably more rare. Like most people aren't, if philosophers just thinking like, man, what is reality? What is God? And like, what is self? And what is ultimate happiness? And what is consciousness?
Hmm.
These people don't ask these fucking questions, man. People
Yeah.
are like, thinking people's like, it's just not that. It's not that. So I do want to shout that out, man. Metaphysical curiosity, you could
Yeah.
say.
Yeah, man. Getting back to it, I allude that to psychedelics, honestly.
Yeah, yeah, no, of course.
They allowed me to be curious about other things than because I was always curious. I think I said this before. I was always curious, but the psychedelics allowed me to shift that curiosity to just a different unfolding. Hard to explain, but just a different way to be curious. Different consulting different guides, consulting different teachers, you could say.
Mm,
Yeah, still staying scientific with it, but just a different way to experiment, I guess is another way to say another metaphor.
mm.
Yeah, yeah.
Have you had peak experiences on this path?
Peak experiences?
Yeah,
Oh, I mean, well, how would you describe what a peak experience is?
that's hard, dude. I thought peak experience would be enough. But, oh man, okay, like a heightened experience during an altered state.
Yeah, yeah, especially on mushrooms.
Oh yeah.
Um, yeah, I think magic mushrooms, 100%. Um, but also other, I guess, mini peak experiences through meditation, in yoga, maybe just also just being with some good friends too. Sometimes I'm just in the moment with some good people. I'm just like, yeah, this is it. This is what it's all about. It's hard to say. It's hard to say. But it all aligns with love. And there's the corny cliche. But whatever this peak experience, however it comes to me, it always just alludes to like some kind of loving action or loving coming into me or giving love or both. It's just like love in the moment and realizing, oh, this is it. This is the peak. This is what life is really all about.
Well,
So,
dude, I
yeah.
really like what you said about with friends as well, man. This is actually really advanced. So, if you can find the absolute in the relative, you can see God's love in your friends or in your family, man, that is where you want to be. Because
Yeah.
if you could, you would just want to have it totally in your experience all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's completely possible. Of course, it is because you are it. But and there's no limit, and you can just go and do it, and you can have it all. But man, I really like that. That speaks to me a lot. That speaks to sort of my higher self because my ego is like, oh man, just go for the most direct experience and all this stuff. Get it as quick as possible and everything. But man, if you can just see it in the people that I was going to say people you love, but really everyone and everything.
Yeah.
I think we spoke about that earlier, didn't we, brother?
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's where you can. That's where you're getting somewhere on this path.
Yeah.
Somewhere.
Yeah. And really, when you're getting somewhere, when you're really getting into it, and I'm not saying I'm on this wavelength, but when you heed Jesus's words and you love thy enemies and you forgive them, Father, for they do not know, that's when it really shines. That's when the enlightenment really tests one on the path. If you can love somebody that doesn't necessarily love you and see them as God in drag in the darkest circumstances. That's the true test. But I think that's what we're ultimately doing. It doesn't mean be a pushover. I'm not saying that, but it's to be, I don't know. It's just like they don't return that hateful energy, you know, that fear. It's to not be the conducive element to the fear and the hate that somebody may be dispelling. To really forgive, to truly forgive. That's where I think this all alludes to. And then that's how we evolve. You know, we break the chain of fear and we create a new chain of love through forgiveness. That's the test.
It's true.
Yeah.
No, I love the little bit of Ram Dass and then how we've got to interact. Like, that's so damn true. Ram Dass, man, what a cliche. What a dude.
Mm-hmm.
What a dude.
Yeah, he's my number one, man. Ram Dass is something about him. Something about him. He was a prophet. He's my number one teacher. If there was just one person I could say helped me on this path that I never even met, it's Ram Dass. It's so, because he's so simple in the way that he explains things.
I've actually got a really interesting question for us, man. Have you been able to experience where, and I'd love to hear if you've had experience with this, man. Have you had experiences where you're able to see that even Ram Dass is but a figment of your consciousness?
Huh. What do you mean by that? Can you go into that a little more?
Of course, man. I think it does need a bit of explanation. So, by virtue of the fact that we haven't met Ram Dass and that he exists as an idea in our mind, it could lead us to question: man, is the idea of Ram Dass just consciousness? You know, this is the kind of way I have to think.
Wow. Yeah.
It's pretty deep stuff. But I just wanted to throw it there, man.
I know what you mean. And I think I do believe he was a real person, but I think his transmission and resonance is so powerful, it doesn't matter. It's kind of like the story of Jesus. It doesn't matter if he actually got crucified or existed or not, or if he was an actual historical figure. His life was the lesson. And Ram Dass's life was the lesson. You know, and that extends to Maharaji and Karoli Baba. Like, their lives and their story were the lesson for us. So if they were an actual physical person that I could have touched or not, doesn't matter. It's really just about their presence here. And that may even be more of what they are. We think of people, right? I think of you and you're a person in your body. But what if what we are is like our story that we present and we give to the world that outlasts us? Maybe that's really why Ram Dass was so resonant to me, because it's not about me meeting him. It's about just like what he presented to the world. And that might be more real than real, if that makes sense. So does that answer your question?
Well, you are Ram Dass. You are Ram Dass, dude. There's nothing in your experience which doesn't suggest that you are not Ram Dass, because you are. Because you are, like, you're the same mind. You're the same mind with a capital M. You're the same consciousness. Like, one of the trippiest insights I had when I've had really interesting awakenings, which is, wow, it's the same consciousness. It's the same. Aruna Maharshi's, your being is his being. It's the same damn thing. And if you get some of my deepest awakenings have been around, it's just you.
That's pretty powerful.
Oh man, this is where you think it gets. This is what I meant about it goes so much deeper than you think.
Yeah, I think that's the purpose of the true guru. Is they're not meant to be like bow down to me. They're meant to reflect that and show you that in you. That's the transmission, to show you that they are essentially you. Like Ramana Maharshi, he didn't care about having followers, and Ram Dass didn't care about having followers. Obviously they did, and they were extremely popular, but they were popular because of what they were showing in others or to others. Yeah, man, that's the true guru. And anybody that calls himself a guru and says you need me, run the other way. That's not what it's about. That's not the teaching.
I think maybe I feel like you probably know this one, because I sense you're very into the Buddha and Lao Tzu and things like that. But I think there's a quote which is something like, "If you see the Buddha on the road,
kill him." Yeah, exactly. I always like to say, if Jesus came back, he would never proclaim that he was back. You wouldn't even know who he was. But there would be a resonance in in the words of Jesus, and I'm just using him as an example because we all know Jesus, but any ascended master never proclaims that they're a teacher. I feel like a teacher never says, I'm a teacher. For the most part. I mean, that's obviously a huge generalization, but I feel as though a true teacher just embodies their teaching, and that's it. That's all they need. They're just here existing, like they're just with us, and they're not trying to get anything out of anybody else by them being them, if that makes sense. Like they're not looking for followers, even though they will get followers probably if they're a good teacher. They're not looking to like snake oil people and get their money out of their teachings, you know? Like a true teacher, a true like a master, man. A true master is just kind of like an offering in their lifestyle, and they're just here. They're just here for a little bit, and they grace us with their presence and teaching just by their life, just how they live. That's the true guru in my sense.
Damn, that's awesome. I totally resonate with that idea that
Right.
the ultimate awakened being, the ascended master, they are just completely probably quiet because they don't need to fucking say anything.
Yeah.
They
I've
are
heard
it.
stories of that. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, please go.
I've heard stories of that, like Ramana Maharshi, there would be a lot of times where he would just be sitting with his followers and not saying a word. And that, to me, that is a teaching. That means so much more than having this hour-long spiel about awakening and life and non-dualism. That to just be able to sit with somebody in silence, that just means something, man. And just that is a lesson in itself. And maybe that's why Ramana was so advanced. Like he just saw that. He saw past, how do I put this? Yeah, he saw past the phenomenal aspect of teaching, and just like I said, embodied the teaching. Like a true teacher becomes the teaching, if that makes sense. Like their whole life and story is the teaching. Like Jesus, he had teachings for sure. He had good quotes for days, but his life is the teaching. Like what happened in his life made him the Messiah among many other teachers. But with that element, with that aspect of looking at teachers, it's a different way than just what they say. When you look at their lifestyle and their whole entire story, the dharma that they truly embody, that's what really makes a teacher in my mind.
Yeah, man.
That's just me, though. That's just
no,
me.
no, brother. I hear that so well, because you can just tell by the subtlety of their presence, and I think just basic indications like their lifestyle. And what's really, really a mindfuck though is that despite that, and I actually totally feel that, man. Despite that, isn't it funny how there could be someone who is incredibly awake, incredibly enlightened, and yet they're almost playing some sort of weird game with humanity by not appearing as an enlightened person, as an awakened person. Maybe actually that would be imagine if they did that. That would be a way of getting you to reflect back to yourself. Oh, I must be it. This person cannot be it. It must be within. It cannot be outside of myself. That's just the thought I randomly had there.
So could you give me an example? Because I'm a little...
No, yeah. So imagine, for example, you see, like, I think there are some spiritual teachers that are not necessarily developed in other areas. For example, socially or personally, or to do with perhaps even ethically. Although they have the understanding, they just don't apply it or embody it, but they do have it. That's an interesting one. I don't know.
I got you. So they don't look like a cliche teacher or yogi, what you're saying. Like they don't, when you think of a master, like he's not in the meditative pose. He doesn't do the ohms a few times a day. He doesn't even speak in that certain kind of yogic philosophy. But you're saying that you could still be a teacher and not look like a teacher. Is that what you're getting at?
Maybe. I suppose the idea came to my mind, and the purpose of that, from my perspective, would be if that was occurring, what that would reinforce is the need for you to go within, because it can't be like if it's being confirmed.
I gotcha.
You know, it's almost like, the appearance is saying, it's deflecting back at you. Hey man, it's not me. It must be within. It's almost
Yeah.
like if you have a bunch of crappy people around, you're like, oh man,
Yeah.
what is going on here? You go inside, you awaken. Now these people are not crappy people. Now these people are.
Yeah. Yeah, man. That's actually very true too. I feel as though I've had this thought before that a lot of the quote gurus of the 20th century that people came to enamor had controversies surrounding like sexual assault and stuff like that. And I feel as though this is kind of weird to say, but I feel as though that like that's part of the teaching, right? Even though it may be inadvertent and indirect, but I feel as though that's part of the teaching in their lifestyle, is that even somebody that you bow down to and you glamorize so much has folly as well. Like they're not the answer. The answer is within. So yeah, I know exactly what you're saying. Like somebody that, yeah, everybody's the guru. I think I said this at the beginning of the podcast. I try to see the guru in everything. So even in the darkest people, even in like the downfalls and the follies of humanity, how do I reflect that upon my own being, you know, in my own Buddhahood, you could say. So I know exactly what you mean. Sometimes the teacher could be a teaching that is it's behind the scenes, I guess you could say. It's kind of shrouded in darkness, but the teaching is still there and it's very subtle. I think that's what you're kind of getting at, right?
Yeah, no, totally, man. Yeah, thanks for reflecting that back. I totally feel that.
Yeah. This is a good talk, man. I appreciate you coming on here. This is good.
Yeah, no, it's really, really refreshing to speak to a like-minded dude.
For sure. Yeah, I feel like we're on the same wavelength in a lot of things. Same mindset, same kind of character and spirit in this whole thing. You know, you come across to me as a very American spirit. Like you seem like an American, if that makes sense. You're American Englishman. I don't know why.
Dude, yeah, people say that a lot, man. People say that a lot.
Yeah.
I've always thought I've got this inner dude going on. That just
the inner dude shines.
Honestly, man, like I'm from the UK, but got an inner dude, man. I can't get rid of it.
Would you ever want to move to the States?
I've been there. I've been to. My favorite place was probably San Francisco.
Okay.
But yeah, man, I don't know. I have a lot of thinking to do around that, but I know there's some really amazing people like yourself, my brother, that connect with there. But I have a certain vision with where I'd like to be materially with location wise, living, you know, maybe 10 years. But honestly, man, I keep my mind super freaking open, and I got to go to places to see what's up. But no, I really enjoyed my visit. It was very, very chill, very different from the UK in terms of the culture and the people. But yeah, man, do you see yourself moving anywhere in the future?
Yeah, I don't see myself being around where I'm at. I live outside of Boston, only because I don't like the winter. I feel as though it's not natural. Like there's something, I don't know, just I don't like the cold, man. It's so cold for so long around here. I don't think it's conducive to happiness. Like it's July right now. I've been outside every day going for a run in the sun and just coming back with so much energy, feeling good. I can't do that from, I don't know, from we'll say November to March around here. And that just totally changes up the mindset and lifestyle. Like it's just not right. So I want to be able to be somewhere where the sun shines a little bit more, because I feel as though the sun is very therapeutic and medicinal, man. In moderation, obviously. There's something special about the energy of the sun, and just simply just letting your body just bask in it, you know, sunbathe for a little bit. There's something very special about that. So that's the main reason why I would like to move. I don't know where, I don't know how, but somewhere warmer. You know, you can probably relate to that.
Yeah. I totally feel you, man. Like, I'll be honest, man, this is a really cool insight, actually. Since I've had more of a spiritual understanding, since I've had a greater level of consciousness from the work, the sun has been into you know, reframed and seen as, wow, this is actually energy right now. Just, you know, getting some nice sun, getting it in fucking everywhere in my body. Dude, it's like before it was just the sun, you know, don't get sunburnt, or this is pleasant, this is the sun. But now it's like, whoa, dude, like it's kind of what you said, like it's very kind of medicinal. You feel like, wow, I'm getting energized right now by this sun. I'm getting that sweet vitamin D. Thank you.
Yeah, right. There's something to it.
there is
we're supposed to be in the sun. We're not supposed to be in these cages that we've built for ourselves. Not necessarily always in the sun. Obviously, we're kind of meant to be in the shade as well, but to be completely confined in a building for the majority of our day, I don't think that's it. I don't think that's it. You can just feel the difference. I think that's what this whole path really comes down to, is like when you do conduct the experiments on yourself, you can find that there is a very subjective and noticeable difference in one's life. When you do go through these practices, whether it's brahmacharya, regular yoga practice, meditation, maybe some psychedelics thrown in here and there, just a general sense of self-inquiry, I can almost guarantee anybody listening to this, you'll be able to find a difference in your life. Even if it's just like a little bit and it's just slow, 15, 20 minutes a day of doing whatever your modality is, there's a noticeable difference. And it ultimately comes down to just becoming happier with life, being a little bit more peaceful, because that's what it's all about, right? But nobody's going to do it for you, right? We all have to do it ourselves. You have to become your own Buddha and your own Jesus, your own teacher. It's within all of us. But see, that could be kind of scary, right? It's like, oh, it's up to me. Oh no. But I look at the other side of the coin and say, oh yeah, it's up to me. Like there's a sense of empowerment in that. Like, oh yeah, I'm the hero, right? I'm the main character, you could say. That sounds a little egotistical, but I think you kind of know what I'm saying. Like this is up to me. So I'm going to do whatever I can to, take life by the balls, you could say, and live the life, live the dream that we're meant to live, because we're actually meant to be happy here. I believe we're meant to be at peace with this and enjoy this experience for while we're here. So yeah, it's all within us. I believe every single human being, we're all capable of it. But
yeah, well said. It's very beautiful. I love that idea, man. Like, of course it's going to just be you. Of course, you've got to do it. Because who else is there in your experience but your own self to do that? Yeah. I love what you said about being your own Jesus. That's kind of what I meant about Ram Dass. He may not be here within your experience, but you can be Ram Dass right now if you want to be.
Amen to that, man.
Whatever you want, you can channel it. Awesome.
Yeah.
Damn good, man.
We're our own savior. Nobody's gonna save you but you. It's the truth. And the beautiful thing is, you save yourself to save the world. Right? It's simple in that way.
Yeah. And another thing to add to that is, you are the world.
Yeah.
So that's exactly what you just said there. When you do save yourself, you do save the world, because you are, your experience, you're projecting the world, and then the world appears differently as you change yourself. So yeah, it's the last thing the ego wants to do.
Yeah.
Ego does not want to do that shit, man. The ego would much rather some Netflix, would much rather some easy sexual activities, some nice foods, some sort of triple drugs, that kind of thing. But you have to listen to the higher wisdom.
Yeah. Amen to that, man. He'll lead the way, because the ego is a beautiful servant and a horrible master. Yeah. The master is within. Hey, man, this is good stuff. I don't really know what else to say. You want to start to wrap this thing up? Do you have anything else you want to say? Anything you want to get off your chest?
It was great to start wrapping things up for me, man. I think we've had a really lovely talk.
Yeah.
Just a great connected, just conscious conversation, brother, which is what I love to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. I think the last thing I'll say is stay on the path, as always. Be conscious. When you're in the moment, that's all you need. Just need to be in the moment, don't be away. And then I think just to echo something that I'm sure I may beat you to it with this one, because I sense you'll come back to this too. Comes down to love.
Amen.
It comes down to love. How about you, man? Do you have any final messages?
No, to be honest with you, no. I thank you. That's all I got to say. I thank you for coming on here. Keep doing your thing, man. You have a lot of wisdom. You have good energy, good spirit overall. Definitely have a bright future. I think a lot of people will resonate with you and just your overall energy that you present to us. So I can't say anything else than keep doing your thing. Keep on keeping on.
Thank you, Gary, man. I appreciate that.
Appreciate you, man. By the way, is Seb your real name?
Yes. Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Short for Sebastian, yeah.
Oh,
Seb.
of course, of course. Okay. Well, in my head, I was thinking Seb was your full name. I was gonna say I'd never met anybody named Seb, but
Yeah,
Sebastian makes
yeah.
sense.
No, it's I just prefer Seb. Like I'm fully Miss Sebastian. I just prefer Seb.
I like it. Seb Jones.
Fuck yeah.
Thank you very much, man.
What's
Um,
going
thank you for anybody that listened this long. I wish you all the best. Keep on keeping on. Peace and
Peace.
love.